Hello dear viewer, it's episode 4 of our Desert Deathworld MEGABASE playthrough. We are gearing up to launch a rocket soon, which means we need to produce some Productivity 3 modules. However, since we're aiming for a MEGABASE, launching a rocket without any cargo doesn't make much sense. So we also need to research space science. We are already making low density structures, but we need rocket control unit production as well. Over to the west of the crashed spaceship, where our old starter base used to be, we will be producing rocket fuel. For now, I will transport the fuel using a very long belt to connect it to the main bus, but eventually I plan to use trains. In the meantime, I've crafted the rocket silo, so let's place it and gather all the materials needed for the launch. To send satellites into space, we'll need to create radars and the satellites themselves. After a bit of maintenance, our first Productivity 3 modules are ready. 4 of them will go into the rocket silo, while the rest will be used in the labs. I'm also keen on boosting productivity for green circuits, which is why I'm utilizing Productivity 1 modules and level 3 assemblers. We will soon mine this juicy 2.4 million copper patch, so let's get an outpost ready. In this playthrough, I plan to smelt all ores right at the outposts, which means we'll need electric furnace smelting arrays. Eventually I want to use bots for ore transport, but for now belts will do, since the bots are a bit too slow. We also need to clear out more natives to make way for train tracks. To unload copper, we'll need to build a new train station and fuel the train with coal. Later on, I will use the mod train refuel station to set up a dedicated station for refueling. We definitely need more miners and efficiency modules. The initial copper ore patch at our starter base is finally depleted, so it's time to deconstruct everything. Paying attention to our energy consumption is very important, and sometimes we need to lay down more solar energy blueprints. Our rocket silo now has a 40% productivity bonus, so now we can start assembling the rocket. We also need to bring space science into our labs. Moving forward, we require a significant number of solar panels due to satellite production, which means I'll need to set up a dedicated factory. At this stage, I've decided to completely overhaul the labs to make use of beacons right away. By using belt weaving on both sides, we can position beacons effectively on both sides of the labs. We are now very close to our first rocket launch. 99% ready to go. T-10. 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of our first rocket. And we have our first 1000 space science packs. However, I've intentionally left a small gap in the belt because I want to equip our labs with Productivity 3 modules before we kick off research. After creating an accumulator sub-factory, the last of the Productivity modules are ready and we can begin our next research. I opted for mining productivity, since laser damage is in a good place for now and bot speed will be more crucial later on. Now that we have a dedicated solar and accumulator sub-factory, we can lay down way more solar energy blueprints and let bots do the construction. Next on the agenda, I want to get rid of the mess that is my current train system. First, we need to create basic blueprints, like this 4-way intersection and also a 3-way intersection. There are no natural barriers on this map, which is why I use a snap to grid feature and a chunk-sized grid size. Let's create a train network based on these blueprints and slowly but steadily replace all the old rail tracks. Meanwhile, our main bus is doing well and we are researching. But back to the train network, let's connect our initial outposts with a new train system. What the? Ouch! Fortunately, this is not a hardcore run, otherwise I would have to restart right now. Our solar energy production allows us to utilize more and more modules and beacons. However, to make the transition to MEGABASE, we need significantly more beacons and way more productivity and speed modules at level 3. Energy consumption will skyrocket, so we need a nuclear power plant very soon. We have to build it close to our starting lake, which is the only body of water on this planet. So let's make space, eliminate biters and expand the perimeter wall. Even though I don't have power Armour MK2 yet, my character feels very strong already. We can take down the old perimeter walls. Let's not forget robopaws, so that our base is still able to repair damage done to our walls. I've crafted the first reactor, so let's start designing our new nuclear power plant. I plan to create a 10-core reactor that will generate 1.44 gigawatt of energy, using the methods outlined in my nuclear power tutorial. If you haven't seen it, you can find a link in the description below and a card in the top right corner if you want to see it. I never chain more than 10 heat exchangers per fluid system to avoid water and steam bottlenecks. While 16 rows of 10 heat exchangers could potentially produce 1.6 gigawatts of energy, the reactors will only provide heat for 1.44 gigawatts. To fuel the reactors, I utilize the logistic network by using requester and active provider chests. I prefer to set in setter stack size to 1, but it's not very important. Creating a small dedicated electric network for fuel insertion and removal. It can prevent a blackout because it is independent from our main grid. A few solar panels and accumulators are sufficient to power this system. Make sure to not place the nearest roboport in range of this electrical network. According to my guide, I'll use 18 turbines for every 10 heat exchangers. The components of the nuclear power plant will be made near our main bus, and bots will deliver and place them. In episode 3 we set up Covrex enrichment, so we can now begin producing nuclear fuel cells. I will request 10 fuel cells for each reactor. The bots delivered the first fuel cells. Nuclear reactor operational. However, there's still way more work to do. We need to connect all the rows of heat exchangers to offshore water pumps. Additionally, we have to add more blocks of turbines. For now, this is sufficient, but I will probably make some changes later on. Occasionally, we need to go back to our main bus and increase production. For example, I had to double plastic production and use red belts. We We now have 10 reactor cores and they are all fueled and operational. But we still need to build hundreds of steam turbines. As is often the case in Factorio, fixing one bottleneck leads to the discovery of another, and this time it's steel. At this point I realized I should have been using Productivity 3 modules for purple and gold science production. Since we plan to have bots construct our base and outposts in the future, it makes sense to build a proper mall now. I'm starting by automating splitters, undergrounds and everything needed for red belts. And after ramping up oil production I finally have it, Power Armour MK2. Now that we have way more space in our equipment grid, we can finally install Mr. Fusion. Let's test our new equipment by visiting the natives. That was fun, but now comes the tedious part. We have to expand our perimeter once again. I want to shape the base and its perimeter defense rectangular and enclose every outpost. Blue circuit production is one of the best spots in our base to start using modules and beacons, because of the high consumption of green circuits. This is how the base looks like in the map view, and the eastern perimeter is almost complete. The mall has to produce more advanced items like express belts, undergrounds and express splitters. Since we're aiming for a mega base, we need to ramp up production of productivity and speed modules level 3. At this stage I made a huge mistake, realizing that the base is running out of coal very quickly. This means I had to increase my efforts pushing out the perimeter wall to enclose the nearest coal patch and start mining. There are a couple of huge biter nests in the way, so we need to spread some more democracy. To reach the coal patch, I used the train blueprints made earlier in this episode. We also need to set up an unload station at our main bus, so let's build that first and then head to our new coal outpost. I need to act fast, because plastic production is nearly at a standstill right now. This will be a temporary unload station, but it should do the job for now. Just look at how pathetic the plastic production is. Bringing in new coal was absolutely necessary. Let's finish the work on our western and southern perimeter wall. Imagine if this game didn't have bots and we had to build and deconstruct everything manually. These are the last pieces and chunks of wall. Now our base defense is clean and rectangular. Here I'm trying to increase green circuit production by using more modules. I will replace it with a dedicated sub-factory in the next episode. Lastly, I want to complete the nuclear power plant. We need to create additional turbine blocks and connect each to a set of 10 heat exchangers. I also reconstruct a few blocks to improve aesthetics and symmetry. It's crucial to keep an eye out so you don't overlook a missing piece of pipe. As you may know, I live streamed this entire playthrough on YouTube, and someone in the chat had some doubt regarding this design. So I saved the game and began stress testing the reactors using Editor. The only tool I needed from the editor was an electric energy interface, which allows us to draw the maximum amount of power possible. I immediately discovered a missing underground pipe. And another one. Additionally, the blocks of turbines in the top left corner were not connected to the main electrical grid. However, after fixing these bugs, the nuclear power plant achieved an output of 1.5 gigawatts. But to stress test the reactor in detail, I removed reactor cores to eliminate heat. I had to do it twice until the energy output dropped way below maximum. The test is successful if the reactors reach a stable output of 1.44 gigawatts once more. This was the case, and now knowing that the reactor design works as intended, we wrap up this episode. If you like this content, please subscribe. I hope to see you next episode or in one of my other videos. Thank you very much.